Hi guys, I'm Demon Killer, and in this video we are going to walk through how we can install Arch Linux on a computer. So I know there are a lot of videos on YouTube covering this topic. However, a lot of the videos are outdated and old, and a lot of the installations are done on VirtualBox. And also, in my opinion, a lot of installations just are too complex for new users to follow. So in this video I'll just firstly show you my take on the Arch Linux installation, and I just wanted to do a physical installation and show you how it actually does, because installing Arch on VirtualBox is pretty easy. So in this video I'll be using this ACER laptop. This is an ACER Aspire V3-471G, and the installation is going to be a legacy BIOS installation, because a lot of installation on YouTube have already covered the UEFI installation. So yes, let's first of all go ahead and do the necessary, that is to grab the ISO and make a bootable USB. Okay, so once you are in your daily driver, it can be a Windows version or any Linux distribution. I'm using Ubuntu 20.04 LTS. The first thing we want to do is go ahead and grab our ISO. So for that, I'm going to open a web browser and search for Arch Linux. You can directly go to the downloads page, but I wanted to show you the home page. So I'm going to click on the first link, which is archlinux.org, and you can read about the latest news and recent updates. But right now I'm going to click on the downloads tab on the nav bar, and we should be redirected to this page, and here are our torrent links, and if you scroll down you should have your custom country wise mirrors. So according to my experience, if you live in Asia, these mirrors are slower than the torrent links, so I'm just going to ignore them, and I'm going to click on the magnet link. So this requires an application called transmission. So transmission is installed by default in Debian based distributions. However, if you don't have transmission, you can always open a terminal and type in sudo apt install transmission. I hope the spelling is right. Type in your password when you're prompted to, and apt will install transmission for you. So once we have transmission, I'm just going to click on open link, and we want to select where we want to download the ISO. So I want it in my downloads folder, so you can click on open and it will start installing, and it should look something like this. Now I already have it downloaded, so I'm just going to cancel this, and the ISO will be downloaded for you. Now the problem with this is a 64-bit version of ISO of Arch Linux, and the official Arch Linux developers stopped supporting 32-bit version of Arch Linux recently, I think in 2018 or 2019. So if you have a 32-bit PC, a PC with 32-bit hardware, you can always go ahead and use the community version of Arch Linux, which is Arch Linux 32. You can search for that, go to the downloads page. I'm just going to show you the home page. So once you are in this page, I'm going to click on the downloads tab again, and click on the magnet link. So the magnet link will lead us to transmission again, and you can click on open link and select where you want it downloaded. I want it in the downloads folder, so this is how it looks like, and I'm going to cancel it again because I already have it downloaded. So the next step really is to make our bootable USB. So for that we're going to need a USB drive. Minimum 8 GB is recommended, and I'm going to insert the USB drive in my daily driver, and we should get notifications. So right now it's burnt with Manjaro Architect. So what we want to do is open a terminal, and let me just make this bigger. Yeah, this is fine. So what we want to do is type in a command sudo fdisk-l, and what this does is that we want to find the name of our drive. So I just showed you my Hewlett Packard USB device. It's 8 gig packaging and 7.57 gigs in reality, and it's called /dev/sdb. Now if you inserted more than one USB device, you should get something like SDC or SDE, but what I recommend really is to insert one USB at a time, and the USB which I want to make a bootable Arch Linux USB is called /dev/sdb. So once we know that, we want to unmount our drive. When we inserted the device, you can see that it shows in the dock as well. So now that we are going to unmount it, it's going to disappear from the dock. So I'm going to type in /umount /dev/sdb with a star, and it shows that the device is unmounted. Now why did we add a star? Because if we type in a command lsblk, we see that SDB has few partitions here, SDB1 and SDB2, and we want to get rid of all the partitions. We want to unmount all the partitions, so that's why we run this command. And now you see all the 3 partitions are unmounted. Now I'm just going to clear the screen, and we want to format our device, so I'm going to type in sudo mkfs, which stands for make file system, and the type of file system we want to make is /x64, and the device which we want to format is /dev/sdb. And once you do that, you want to press Y for yes, and it takes some 30 seconds, and your device will be formatted. As you can see, it was burnt with Manjaro Architect. So once this is done, we can just burn Arch Linux into this USB device, and it will be bootable. So now that this is done, I'm just going to cd into my downloads folder where we have ISOs, and over here is our 64-bit version of Arch Linux, and here is our 32-bit version of Arch Linux. So if you have a 64-bit computer in which you want to install Arch Linux, you want to copy this, and if you have a 32-bit version of Arch Linux like I have, you want to copy this. And now we're going to type in a command sudo dd if stands for input file, and we're going to paste this here, and of means output file, and that's going to be the name of our device. So it's my name, the name of the device is /dev/sdb, and we also need a visual feedback so that we know the progress. So I'm just going to type in status is equal to progress inside quotation marks, and we hit enter, and this should take some time, around 1 to 2 or maybe 3 minutes. And once we have this procedure done, we should have a bootable version of Arch Linux. And regardless of whether you are burning a 32-bit version of Arch Linux or a 64-bit version of Arch Linux, we are going to install it with legacy BIOS settings only. So I'll see you when this is done. Okay guys, so once this procedure is done, you can see it took me around 184 seconds, which is around 3 minutes of time, 3.3 minutes if my math is right. So our USB device is bootable now. I'm just going to unplug it, and we are going to insert it inside our ACER device which we want to install Arch Linux on. Alright, so before we begin the actual installation, let me just quickly go through the specs of this computer. So this is a very old computer. This is an ACER Aspire V3-471G, as I told you. This is a decade old. I got it in around 2009 or 10, and it came with, it still has an Intel i5 Core i5 2400M 32-bit CPU. It came with Windows 7, as you can see the sticker on the left, and it came with an NVIDIA GeForce GT, I think 1 GB GPU. Apart from that, it has 4 gigabytes of RAM, because of course it's a 32-bit computer, and it comes with 500 GB hard disk drive as ROM. Okay, so once we have ensured that we have our bootable USB ready, let's plug it into our device and start the installation procedure. But one thing we want to make sure is that we have our boot menu enabled. It is disabled in many computers by default. So what you want to do is hit your power button and press whatever key on your keyboard to go to your BIOS. Once you do that, you want to just type in your password if you have any for your credentials, and then tab over to the main option here, and you want to make sure that F12 boot menu is enabled. It is disabled in many cases by default. You just want to make sure that is enabled. Hit F10 to save changes and hit yes to exit. Now you want to hit F12 and enter your boot menu. Here you want to select your USB device. In my case it is the first one. Once we select our USB device, we will be greeted by this screen, in which we can select our select to boot in our live medium. So the first one is what we want to do, boot Arch Linux. Hit enter, and this should load the live Arch Linux medium, and this will take around half a minute to a minute or two, but once it's done, we'll be greeted by a black screen. And one more thing I want to tell you here, that you should know that we will be logged in as root user. So let's just wait for this to load. Alright, so we are booted into the live environment of Arch Linux, and the first thing you notice is that the font size is really very small, and many people have trouble reading the font or reading the text which is on the screen. And as well as in my case, I have to record a video, so let's first of all increase the screen size by typing set font letter Cyreb. It's a weird one. I'll put the spelling on the screen. Sun 32. Hit enter and we should get this font. Letter Cyreb Sun 32 is the largest font available by default in the Arch Linux repos. So this is what we have. Now we will begin the installation procedure. So let me just clear the screen. From now onwards the actual installation procedure begins. So the first thing we want to do here is get the name of our drive. So you can do that by typing ls blk, and as you can see here I have two drives, SDA and SDB. So like I told you earlier, that this computer has 500 gigs of space. It comes with a 500 gig hard disk drive. So as I can see, SDA is the drive because it has a lot of space there, around 465.8 gigs, and SDB is the 8 gig USB device which I have booted Arch Linux Live ISO on, and that you can see is around 7.6 gig, 8 gigs on the packaging of course. So now that we know the name of our device, let's just clear the screen and enter a utility called cfdisk. So let me just make sure that cfdisk you're able to see what's on the screen. So yes, you're able to see what's on the screen. So what we want to do is when you enter the cfdisk utility, you will see that some partitions are already made. Now these can be, in your case, some operating system that is already installed on your computer. For example, it can be Linux Mint or any Windows version, any Linux distribution, any Windows version. In my case, I already have Arch Linux installed because I did a dry run before pressing the record button. So what you want to do is use your arrow keys to move around up and down to select the drives, and left and right to select these options here, which you can see: bootable, delete, resize, quit. So what we want to do is delete these partitions. So what we want to do is tab over to delete, hit enter, and you can see that some free space has been created in green. Now what you want to do is select the other partitions you have, tab over to delete and delete them. So you can have 2 to 4 drives, whatever number of drives you have, you just want to delete them. Now we will be left with free space. So I deleted all the drives. Since this is not a dual boot video, so there is no question of keeping any space for any other operating system. So we are going to use all this space for installing Arch Linux. So like I told you, I have a 500 GB hard disk drive, Toshiba 500 GB hard disk drive, and out of that we have 465.8 gigs usable. So what we want to do is make two partitions here. The first is going to be the root partition and second is going to be the swap partition. So what we want to do is hit on new, and it will ask how much space we want to allocate for this partition. So you can allocate the swap first and the root later, but in this case I'm allocating the root first, swap later. So swap is always equivalent to the amount of RAM you have. So like I told you, I have 4 gigs of RAM installed, so I'm going to leave around 4.8 gigs free space for swap, and the remaining space is going to be allocated for root. So 460.8 gigs is fine for root partition. Hit enter, and the type of partition is going to be primary because we don't have any case of dual booting. I think I accidentally quit the cfdisk utility, so let me just enter and delete all the partitions again. And what we want to do is assign 460 gigs of space for root. Hit enter. Type of partition is primary, and now tab over to the free space. Okay, before that we want to make this partition bootable. So tab over to bootable and hit enter. So under the boot option you should see an asterisk. Now with your down arrow key, come to the free space available, hit on new, and this partition is going to be 4 gigs technically, but I just had 4.8, so we'll go with that. The type of partition is going to be primary, of course. And now we want to tab over to type. Since this is going to be a swap partition, hit enter and come over to type 82, which is Linux swap / Solaris. Hit enter. So we have allocated this space as swap and this space as root. So now we want to make sure the name of these drives separately. So the name of my hard disk is SDA, which is going to be written as /dev/SDA, and in that we have made two partitions, /dev/SDA1, which is the root partition, and /dev/SDA2, which is the swap partition. So I hope this is very clear. If you are using if you have a 1 terabyte hard disk drive, a 1 TB hard disk drive, and probably 8 gigs of RAM, so what you want to do is double what I did here. Just double everything here, put 8 gigs of swap and probably 922 gigs of space for root. So because usually in 1 TB hard disk drive you get around 930 gigs of free space. So anyway, you get the idea. If you have 1 TB hard disk drive and 8 GB of RAM, you can just double whatever I did here, or you can just allocate the amount, leave out the amount of swap area you have, and then allocate the remaining area for your root partition. So once that's done, let's write this. So tab over to write, and we want to write the partition table. So type in YES, hit enter, and now we want to tab over to quit the CF disk utility. So the next thing we want to do after we partition our disk is to format them. So you already saw how to format them while we partitions while we were making the bootable USB. So what you want to type is mkfs make file system. The type of file system we want to make is ext4, and the name of the drive which we want to format /dev/SDA1 in my case. Hit enter. Press Y when it asks proceeds anyway. It takes some seconds and SDA1 will be formatted. Alright, so SDA1 is formatted. What we want to do is mount our system on SDA1, which is the root partition. So we're going to type in MOUNT mount. Name of the partition is /dev/SDA1, and we are going to create a mount point which is going to be /MNT. Hit enter. Now SDA2, we allocated it as the swap area, but it is not a swap partition yet. It is just a 4.8 gig partition. So we want to assign that as swap. So we are going to type in make swap and name of the partition /dev/SDA2. Hit enter. So swap is created. So it is a proper swap partition now, but it's not initialized. So we need to initialize it by typing swap on /dev/SDA2. Hit enter. So at this point we are done with partitioning, mounting, and doing all that stuff. Till here you do not need any internet connection, but from now on we are going to need an internet connection for whatever we do. And what we are going to do next is download the packages, the paste packages from the Arch Linux servers. So I'm going to just clear the screen, and now we are going to connect to internet. So since this is a laptop, I will be connecting it via Wi-Fi, but if you are a LAN user, Ethernet cable user, you can just plug in and you should have internet connection by default. Now what we want to do is do the ping test to ensure that you have internet connection, but for Wi-Fi users we need to first set up our Wi-Fi. So what you want to do is type in IP link. They should show you three options. The first one is loopback, which you can ignore. Second, in my case, is ENP4S0F2, which is of course different in your case, but it should start with ENP, and anything that starts with ENP means that's your Ethernet cable, LAN cable. In my case it shows no carrier because I don't have an Ethernet connection. Third one is WLAN 0. It shows broadcast, which means this is up and running. So what I want to do to connect to Wi-Fi is type in Wi-Fi -menu. Hit enter, and you should be greeted by a screen like this. It takes some time. You should be greeted by a screen like this. Select your Wi-Fi, select your SSID, hit OK. Now it will ask for a name for a new profile, so you can just ignore this. Hit OK because this is anyways temporary. It won't last after the reboot. Hit OK. Type in your Wi-Fi password. Hit enter, and we should be greeted by the screen again. Alright, so we have Wi-Fi up and running, but in order to test if we have Wi-Fi running, we are going to do the ping test. So this is common for both Ethernet users as well as Wi-Fi users. Type in ping for the count of let's say 5, Arch Linux .org. You can connect to any website, and as you can see, I do have internet connection. So if you did all this process and you still don't have internet connection in the case of Wi-Fi or Ethernet users, you can type in the command IP link first, and you want to make sure the name of your interface. So if you are using Ethernet, it's going to be ENP and something something. If you are using Wi-Fi, it's going to be WLAN something something. So what you want to do is type in IP link, name of the interface. For example, I'm using Wi-Fi and the name of my interface is WLAN 0, which is option 3, and you want to type in up. You want to what happens is usually your interface is deactivated, so you want to activate it by typing up this command, IP link, name of your interface, and up. So now I'm not going to hit enter because I already have internet running, so I'm just going to clear the screen. And what we want to do is edit. First of all, we want to download the packages, but before that we want to edit the mirror list. So what we want to do is open a text editor, Nano. Nano is built in into the live version of Arch Linux, which we are using right now, and we want to edit the file /etc/pacman.d. Why Pacman? Because Pacman is the package management utility of Arch Linux, so that's where we are going to download our base files from, and /mirror list. Hit enter, and you should be greeted something similar to this. So I'm using the 32-bit version of Arch Linux, so it has limited servers, as you can see. On the 64-bit version, this list is very big. You have around 255, 256 different mirrors and servers. So what you want to do is tab over to your area or the country which is nearest to you. For example, I live in India, so I have a server for India. If you live in US or Switzerland, Russia, Japan, and some European countries like Germany and France, you can just tab over to your country and hit backspace and uncomment your country server. Now in your 64-bit system you can do the same, but from my experience, if you live in Asia, you shouldn't do this. You shouldn't touch this list at all, because the country-wise servers are slower than the worldwide mirrors. The country-wise mirrors are slower than the worldwide mirrors, so we just don't want to touch this list. However, if you live in Europe or America, US, you can just go ahead and edit this list by uncommenting the country nearest to you or your country itself. So now I'm not going to edit this list because I already told you why. So hit Ctrl O to save your settings, hit enter, and Ctrl X, which is the command for exiting the Nano utility, the Nano text editor. Now we are going to use Pacman to install our base systems. So we can't actually use Pacman in the live environment of Arch, so we are going to use a derivative called Packstab. So we're going to type in Packstab, and we want to download the base system of Arch Linux, so we're going to type in base. Over here we are also going to install some important components which are really necessary in my opinion for getting the base system ready. You can also install all the peripheral stuff like text editors and all of that stuff here, but I think we can install, it is more appropriate to install them when we chroot into the environment rather than installing them right now. So over here we are just going to install the things which are really complementary to the base system. So one of them is going to be the Linux kernel itself. So I'm going to type in Linux. So it's going to download the kernel. Now this is going to download the latest kernel, which is version 5.7.7. However, and this is not the LTS kernel, okay? So however, if you want to install the LTS kernel, you can type in linux-lts. So I'm not going to install the LTS kernel, because if I had to install an LTS kernel, why would I use Arch Linux? Why would I install a rolling release distribution anyways? So I'm just going to install the latest kernel available. However, if you want the LTS kernel, I just showed you what you can do. What we want to install apart from the base and the kernel is also the base development packages, which is base devel. Now this contains your G++ and GCC compilers for C++ and C, also your Python interpreters, and if this is very important because it contains the fake root binary. So if you are planning to build on AUR packages, you need base devel, okay? Apart from this, you also want to install your Linux headers. So this contains your sudo command and all of that stuff. If you are installing the LTS kernel, what you want to do is type in linux-lts -headers. So I'm not installing the LTS kernel, so it's just going to be linux-headers in my case. And lastly, we want to install linux-firmware. What this package has, this linux.firmware package has, is all your required essential firmware for audio, video, and Wi-Fi when we reboot the computer post installation. So these are the most important packages you should install: base package, the kernel itself, the base development package, the headers, and the firmware. So hit enter, and okay, yes, we forgot to specify where we want to download the ISO these packages. So we are going to install it in the /mnt mount point we created on the root directory. This is very important. So this is a mistake people make. I also did here, that I forgot to specify where we want to download and install these packages. So hit enter now, and this is going to create the root package at the /mnt mount point, which is on the /dev/sda1 partition, which we assigned as root. So this should take some time depending on your internet speed. From my experience, it takes around 15 to 20 minutes in most cases if you're downloading all these packages. If you're just downloading the base package, it should take around 5-10 minutes probably, or 5-10 minutes. So I'll see you once this is done, and once this is done, we will just root into our system and install all the peripheral packages like text editors and things like that. Alright, so now that we have downloaded and installed all the application from the internet, we need to generate an fstab file. So in order to do that, we're going to type in gen fstab -U and the mount point, which is /mnt, and two right pointy brackets, the ones we use in HTML or CSS, and the location is going to be /mnt/etc/fstab. Hit enter. So we have our fstab file generated. Now what we want to do is chroot into our system. So what chrooting is actually, it changes the apparent root directory. So whatever operations we did till now at this point were done on the live environment of Arch Linux, the one which we booted via the bootable USB. But now we want to do some settings on our 2B version of Arch Linux. Like once we reboot, we want Arch Linux to be working in a state that it is productive. So in order to do that, we need to do some settings beforehand, pre-installation, before the whole installation process is done. And in order to do that, we need to be able to access that 2B environment in the 2B version of Arch Linux. So to go there, we use chroot. So in order to chroot, we are going to type in arch-chroot and the mount point, which is /mnt, and we are inside our 2B version of Arch Linux, which we will see post installation. So hit enter, and you should be inside your chroot. So the first thing that we are going to do post chrooting is set our time zone. So for those of you who live in India, you can type in this ln-sf/user/share/zone info/Asia/Calcutta. A and C are capital in Asia and Calcutta, space /HC/local time. Hit enter. So regardless of where you live in India, Mumbai, Delhi, Chennai, Guwahati, Kolkata, doesn't matter. This is our time zone, so just go ahead and blindly type it. Now if you don't live in India, what you can do is go to the user share zone info directory by typing cd/user/share/zone info and list the contents there. So you can see, like, obviously you can see the regions, the major regions. So if you live in Africa, you can go to the Africa directory. If you live in America, North or South America, doesn't matter, you can go to the America directory. If you live in Asia, like I do, So you can go to the Asia directory, and there are also some certain directories like Brazil and Canada, Cuba, all that stuff like that, but they usually aren't something you want to look into. So just go to your continent, and once you do that, like I'm going to Asia, you can see all your major regions. So whether you live in Iran, Iraq, or Japan, or Korea, Pakistan, China, Nepal, doesn't matter, all your major time zones are here. So just go ahead and select them. So for those of you who live in India, Calcutta is our time zone. So what you want to do is type in this command and your region, which is Asia, America, Europe, Africa, and then the name of your time zone, space /HC /local time, and you'll set your time zone. All right. So now what we want to do is enable our hardware clock. So we're going to type in HW clock -- syst OHC, hit enter, and our hardware clock is set. So what our hardware clock does is it keep tracks of the time when our computer is shut down, when the power is down. So for example, if I shut down my computer at say 9 p.m. And I reboot my computer half an hour later, so I want the time to be shown as 9:30 and not as 9 p.m. So hardware clock, there's a device in your computer which is always running, so this keep tracks of the time when the power is down. All right, now we want to install a text editor. So as you already saw that we use the text editor Nano, but remember that was done in the live version of Arch Linux. What operations we are doing right now is in the 2B version of Arch Linux that we will expect post installation. So we need to have a text editor which is obviously not built in. So we are going to use Pacman. Pacman is the package management utility of Arch. So pacman-s is going to be the command via which we are going to be installing all the packages from now onwards. Alright, so we need to install Nano. You can go ahead and install any terminal based text editor, Nano or Vim, depending on your skill set, but Nano is really the stuff for beginners. So hit enter and hit Y and Nano should be installed. Alright, so once we have a text editor installed, we need to edit a few files. So the first file that we are going to edit is the one concerning our keyboard layout. So what you want to do is type in Nano or the name of the text editor you install, following by /hc/locale.gen. Hit enter and we are inside the locale.gen file, and we want to select our keyboard layout. So for most people, including myself here, we will be using the US International Keyboard, which is this en_us.utf-8. So you want to uncomment that. All right, if you live in UK, you can go ahead and uncomment the Great Britain GB one, but for me I use the English US International Keyboard, and most of you will do. So just select your keyboard layout, uncomment that particular line, hit Ctrl+O to save that file, and hit Ctrl+X to exit Nano. All right, we can also edit the locale.conf file. The difference is just that we see a blank screen, so we need to type in our locale, which is in my case UTF-8. So you're going to type in lang in capital is equal to en_us in capital .utf-8. Ctrl+O to save, Ctrl+X to exit, and now we need to generate the particular locale we selected. So you're going to type in locale-gen. Locale is basically our keyboard layout, so we are generating our keyboard layout, and that is done. All right, now post installation, another thing we'd expect is is to have internet connection. So there are two types of internet connection. We can either go for wireless, like I'm using a laptop, so I will be using Wi-Fi, and you can also opt for Ethernet. So if you are let's focus on Wi-Fi first. So if you are planning to use Wi-Fi like I am going to do, we need to install certain applications via Pacman. So type in pacman-s. The first thing we want to install is Network Manager. Second thing we want to install is WPA supplicant, WPA_supplicant. We also want to install wireless tools, and we want to install netctl. Hit enter and hit Y for yes. It will also ask you for default, so you can hit enter over there, hit Y for yes, and this should take some time, and you should have all these tools downloaded and installed. Alright, now we downloaded network manager, so what we want to do is enable it. So we can type in system ctl enable network with N capital and manager with M capital, no space in between them, hit enter, and a bunch of symlinks will be generated. Alright, for those of you who plan to use Ethernet, you want to install network manager, of course, that this works for both wireless and wired, and you want to install DHCPCD. Alright, and you can hit enter, and I'm going to hit no, N for no, because I'm not planning to use wired connection or Ethernet cable at the moment, and obviously I can always download this later. But if you plan to do, you want to install network manager and DHCPCD. Once you do that, you want to enable DHCPCD, so you are going to type in system ctl enable DHCPCD, and once you hit enter, one of the symlink will be generated, and you will be able to use internet post installation. Now another thing you want to install is your sound drivers. So if you plan to listen to music like I do, so you can install your sound drivers. So we are going to install ALSA, which is the acronym for Advanced Linux Sound Architecture. So pacman-s ALSA. Along with ALSA, we also want to install ALSA-utils. So this includes the ALSA mixer. Hit enter. Hit enter again for defaults. Hit Y for yes, and they should take some time to install. Alright, so we should have sound post installation. Now what we want to do is generate an init file for your Linux kernel. So if you're using the 2020 version, you don't have to do this, because this was already done when you installed the packages. So this was done when we packstrapped all the packages. Alright, but let's say in case you are doing this on a 2019 or 2018 version of Arch ISO, I do suggest running this command, and there's no harm in generating an init file. So we're going to type in mkinit cpio-p and Linux. Now I downloaded the Linux kernel, the latest Linux kernel, so I'm just going to type Linux. If you downloaded the LTS kernel, you want to type in -LTS and then hit enter. So this generates the init file. Alright, so the init file is generated, but like I said, in the 2020 version it was already generated at the time of packstrap. So for 2020 users, you don't need to do this necessarily, but there's no harm in running this command. Alright, now we also want to generate a password for the root user. We haven't got a password for the root user, so you want to type in passwd, hit enter, and you can type in any password you want, and our password is generated. Now we should be able to reboot, but there are few things we want to do. The first is to create a user if you want to. This can be done post installation, but I do suggest making a new user. And the second is to create our to download and install our bootloader of choice. So first I will just go ahead and create a user. So you can type in user add -m-g, all in small, users, this is a group, and then -G, and then we want to make this user a part of a group called wheel. I'll just tell you what that is, and then you want to type in any username. So let's say I want the user to be Demon Killer. Hit enter. So we have created a user called Demon Killer, and he is part of the wheel group. So we can opt that out. We don't want him to be part of any group, because we can always do that later. But yeah, it's always good to have the user as part of the wheel group, and I'll tell you why. Before that, let's set a password for this user. So we want to type in passwd and name of the user, which is Demon Killer, and I'm going to set a password for him. So password for Demon Killer has been set. Now we want to add the user Demon Killer to certain groups. We already added him to the wheel group by default, but let's add him to other groups, because the user demon killer might want access to audio. He might want to listen to music, he might want to play videos, and he might want to store files, right? So he needs certain permissions, and that's why he needs to be in certain groups. So we're going to type in user mod -a capital G, no spaces here, and you can add him to groups. So let's add him to the wheel group again, just for the sake of it. He's already part of the wheel group. He also needs to be part of the audio group to be able to access the audio, to be able to play music. He also needs to be part of the video group because he wants to play videos. He needs to be part of the optical group so that he can access USB and all that stuff. And he wants to be part of the storage group. And whom do we want to be part of all this group? That is the user demon killer. So we need to type in his name by pressing space. Hit enter, and he is part of all these groups. Now there are a lot of groups like VBox users if you want to allow him access for VirtualBox, but all that is really peripheral, not necessary at the moment for the user demon killer. If you want to check which groups the user is in, you can always type in groups demon killer, and it will show you all the groups the user demon killer is part of. Alright, now that is done, we want to edit the sudoverse file so that the user demon killer has access to has root privileges, basically, so that he can download and install files on his own and do certain stuff which require root privileges otherwise. So a lot of people will try to do it in vi sudo, but that will require vim, so I'm not going to do that. I'm just going to use the text editor we download, which is nano, and we're going to type in /etc/sudoverse, hit enter, and we should be in this file. Come all the way down, and we want to uncomment this part here. %wheel all is equal to all in brackets all. Uncomment it. Just delete the hash or hashtag, whatever you call it, and then we want to hit Ctrl O and Ctrl X. So the user demon killer has root privileges now because he's part of the wheel group. So that is done. We have set a user, and similar way you can set up many users as you want according to your needs. So the final thing that is left to do is to get a bootloader. Now I'm going to install grub because that is really popular, and that works with everything, and people who come from other Linux environments are used to grub, so there's no other reason for me to install any other bootloader. So we're going to install it by typing our pacman -s command and grub. You can also type in grub.bios, is one and the same thing. Hit enter and Y for yes. Alright, so we have grub installed. Now we need to so what we actually did is we installed the grub files. We downloaded it and installed it. However, grub is not actually installed on our hard disk. So in order to do that, we need to type in grub-install. And where do we want it to be installed? That is the name of our hard disk. Remember, at the beginning of the installation, I told you the name of our hard disk is /dev/sda, of which we made two partitions, SDA1 and SDA2. We want to install grub on the whole partition, not on the whole hard disk drive, not on any partition. I hope you're getting my point. So this is /dev/sda, not SDA1, not SDA2, the whole hard disk. Hit enter, and grub will be installed on your hard disk as a bootloader. We just installed the files, but now it will be installed as a bootloader. Alright, so once that is done, we also want to generate the grub configuration file, so that we know that we want grub to be the bootloader for our Arch Linux installation. So for that, we need to type in grub.mkconfig, make config, and then -o, and then the directory where grub is, so it's going to be /boot/grub/grub.cfg. .cfg, right? grub.config, hit enter, and it will detect our operating system. So it found our Linux disk image, it found our init file. That's why we needed init in the first place. All right. Since I'm also on a laptop, I want to install my microcode for the installation. So if you're running Intel CPU like I am, I already told you I have a Core i5 here. So you want to install this package called Intel-ucode. Hit enter, hit Y for yes. This is a small installation, really helpful. This is kind of your CPU driver. For AMD users, you're going to type in, if you have an AMD CPU, you're going to type in AMD-ucode. All right, so we are done with the installation, and this is pretty much it. So we set up a lot of things. Now I'm not setting up a graphical environment in this video. I am not setting up any other peripheral stuff. This is just going to be a plain installation with the basic utilities so that I can browse the web, listen to music. And you might be wondering, how am I going to listen to music and browse the web without having a graphical environment? Well, that can be done. Please subscribe to the channel. I'll show you how to do all these things in the next videos, how we can do all the day-to-day stuff, browsing the web, playing music, playing videos, just via this plain installation, this plain text-based installation without a graphical environment. How we are going to do that? So just subscribe to this channel if you like this video. And right now what we are going to do is exit the chroot and go back to our live environment. So we are going to type in exit, and we have exited the chroot. Now what we want to do is unmount all the mounted partitions. So we actually only have one mounted partition, which is /dev/sda1, but we're just going to recursively run this program so that all the mounted disks are unmounted. So we can type in umount -r and /mnt. So hit enter, and all our mounted partitions are going to be unmounted. What we are going to do now is just reboot. Actually, I'm going to shut down so that I can enable, I can remove my USB device. If you're fast enough, you can just type in reboot. So just let's shut down our computer. Hit enter. And yes, our installation is complete. Now I'm going to press the power button again. And let's see if we can boot into Grub. There it is, guys. We have Grub bootloader. Hit enter for our new installation. Alright, so it seems it's booting up, and yes, we have our login screen here. So I'm going to type, first of all, enter the root account to see if we are able to log in. And yes, we are able to log in. I'll also go ahead and check for the daemon killer user we created. Sorry. And yes, we are able to log in as daemon killer. Now, what I want to do is show you the screen fetch. But in order to do this, let me just go to the root account so that I don't have to type in sudo every time. Alright, so over here I'm going to type in pacman. So I do have internet connection here, right? Hit Y for yes, and it says I don't have internet connection. Wow. So what can we do? We did all the steps properly, but we don't seem to have an internet connection. So we are going to open a utility called nmtui, and you should get a message like this. I don't think you're able to see this, so let me just zoom into nmtui. Alright, you are able to see. So come here to activate a connection and select your network SSID. Type in your password. and our connection is set. So now we want to come all the way down to back. It's little bit bizarre, but hit back and come down here to quit. Once we quit, we should have internet connection. So let me just clear the screen, and we are going to install I know you're not able to see anything, so let me just set the font again. Letter Scirep 732. All right, I hope you're able to see now. So let's go ahead and install NeoFetch. Hit Y for yes. As you saw, we have internet connection. You can always go ahead and run the ping test. As of now, I'm just going to run the NeoFetch utility to show you that our Arch install is done. Obviously it's done, but yeah, just wanted to show you the screen fetch. So there it is, guys. We have Arch Linux installed on our computer. This is a base install, and we can be really productive just from this version of Arch Linux without any desktop environment. We can browse the web, we can play music, we can pretty much do a lot of stuff. We can do programming, we can edit, we can make websites out of here. So there's literally a ton of things we can do just with this environment. So that is why I don't want to install a desktop environment as of now. I will install a desktop environment eventually, but I think that is going to be the last video of this series. So in the next couple of videos, I will be talking about how to browse the web, how to play music, how to play videos, and all that stuff. For that, please do subscribe if you are able to install Arch Linux by following these methods. I hope you are able to I'll just request that please do subscribe my channel. That will be really encouraging. And I also show you how to set up your internet connection post installation. So this is it, guys. We have Arch Linux running, and yeah, I'm just saying it again, please do subscribe again. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope you have a nice day.